privilege of being the first moderator this morning for our panel. Very excited to welcome with me on stage His Excellency Mr. Rodney SIKUMBA, Minister of Tourism for Zambia. Next, I would also like to invite up Dr. Millicent MOMBESHORA from ZTA Board Member and Strategy Investment Policy Consultant. From Addis Ababa and Ethiopia, I would like to invite up on stage Ms. Jerusalem Fasika, Country Manager for Zimbabwe for African Development Bank, as well as Mr. Sean Mann, Senior Tourism Specialist at the World Bank, Ms. Mary Mushi, Program Officer for Policy and Market Development at SADC, and finally, Ms. Shirley Cox. If you could all please come up on stage. If you can sit by your face, that would be great. Thank you. Are we one short? Oh, fantastic. Sir, maybe I will stand. I will stand. Minister, would it be possible that I offer you this seat, and maybe we can all just move? Yeah, it seems you are one short. And then I thought to start off our morning before we jump straight into the panel, we can do a little bit of the Mendi session that we did yesterday. So I'll ask the team to put that up for us in a few minutes. Please scan the QR code with your phone. We have a couple of questions here that I think will lead fantastically into the conversation that we're having this morning. So please scan the QR code and set up and go into Mendi. I see some phones out, that's fantastic. So for those who are joining us, we have a QR code up on screen for Mendi. Please can you scan it and share with us your views? We have a couple of questions to share there. Show of hands, can everyone scan it? Can you see it clearly? I'm gonna take no answer as a sign that that's good. Yeah? So ladies and gentlemen, if you can show me by lifting your hand up, have you been able to get the QR code scanned? Let's see. Okay. Fantastic. To the left of the room, yep. All righty. So we will have a few questions that are coming up on Mendi. Please rank them in order of your preference of what you think is most important. There are no wrong answers. Can we go to the next screen for Menti, please? Are we still scanning? Can I move on to the questions, audience? Are you succeeding with scanning the QR code? Yes? I see some phones still up in the left there. Are we good? Okay. Can we have the questions up, gentlemen? Okay, so I think we can bring Menti back at the end. Let's go straight into our panel. I'm very excited to be the moderator of this particular topic today, having been in travel and tourism before moving into the payment space for over 20 years. The topic of navigating financial ecosystems, sustainability, and investor matchmaking is something that I think can leave a lot from our panel today for the audience that we have. I think normally we talk sustainability, people are thinking around the environment, but financial sustainability allows businesses to grow and scale. So I have a question for all of our speakers, and I think I will start from Shelley and move down this way, and we'll rotate again. But what are the main barriers that female entrepreneurs or women-led SMEs in tourism have faced from your experience?
Thank you, Mbali, and good morning, everyone. Firstly, I would just like to say what an honor it is to be on this panel alongside such a strong representation of the tourism sector and the financial sector as well. So thank you very much. In terms of the barriers, I think one of the first barriers I would like to mention is a misalignment between SME business practices and the financial systems. Particularly from a tourism perspective, with lending, when you have seasonal fluctuations in terms of revenue generation, the lending or the traditional lending structures don't always lend themselves well to the tourism SMEs. The second barrier that I would like to mention is often SMEs operating in isolation. And I think one of the big potential boosters for SMEs is to look at more aggregated or cooperative models to really push themselves into market access. And the third I would like to mention is on the sustainability aspect. I know you were talking more on the financial sustainability, but I don't think enough weight is given to actual ESG practices and the value that they can bring from a financial aspect. Those are the three I would like to put forward at this stage. Thank you very much, Mbali.
Yes, a very good morning. A very good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for having me in the panel. I think one of the barriers that faces tourism businesses, especially the ones that are being led and operated by women, is financial literacy. I think most of these SMEs operating, especially in the rural areas, miss out the skill of financial skill and also business management, which is quite key because at the end of the day, tourism is business and there are business principles that need to apply. And I'm not speaking of the very complex principles, but rather the very simple one, like having records for sales, the bookkeeping, separating, say, finances, personal finances and business finances. Such record keeping and also having history of a business is quite important. And to financial institutions, it's high risk to work with businesses that do not have records behind to support their proposals to credit or access to finance. Secondly, I think, which is a very common one from an African perspective, especially from the rural area, is the collateral. It is quite unfair, I would say, or quite disadvantaged to women owning properties that are quite required to be eligible to access finance, especially with the financial institutions, the big financial institutions like banks. Most of times you'll find that for you to have access to credit, you're required to have ownership of registered properties, such as land or buildings. And women are quite disadvantaged based on the cultural perspective that is around in most of the rural areas in Africa. Thirdly, I would call it a missing middle. You find that it's quite convenient for women to get finance, access to finance, where savings, say in groups or village banks or microfinance, and they will operate for some time. And when it's quite difficult to find them graduating to higher financial banks, graduating to a point where they're now capable, their businesses have grown, they're now capable to, or they're in a position to acquire finance in big institutions. But they normally, or at a larger scale, they don't get to that level. So that also is a barrier. I will stop there for now.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Right. Morning, everyone. Very nice to be here. Thank you. Until I saw there was another gentleman, I thought I was going to be the odd man out here, but I'm not. So I'm going to, these issues I was also going to mention, but I'm going to start with a quick human story that I think might be, encapsulates the problem. So about 30 years ago, I was on a road trip in Ethiopia, going from Addis to Tigray in the north, and we stopped somewhere along the road for a Coke, and when we stopped, we were just out of the car, kind of hanging around this small shack, and some kids started to gather around. There were two of us, and some kids started to gather, and so I decided to buy a Coke for. There were two groups of kids, boys and girls. So I thought, okay, I'll just get them a Coke as well. So I got a Coke, gave it to the girls, and got another Coke and gave it to the boys. Within less than probably 30 seconds, the Coke that I gave to the boys was smashed on the floor, spilt on the floor, because they were fighting over it. The girls, in the meantime, were just taking a sip, passing it to the next one, taking a sip, passing it to the next one. And I don't know, that story has stuck with me my whole life. I'm the father of 3 daughters, so obviously, gender empowerment, women's empowerment is important for me. But that story for me really encapsulates this issue between and some of the the kind of background behind it. But I think in an African context, overcoming this need for collateral is probably the fundamental thing. So we're still, living in societies where patronage is is just the norm, and you're seeing that now in America. It's coming through pretty strongly, but these things have to be overcome. And I think for me, particularly with my daughters, and this is really what I tell them, if you want resilient African economies, you're going to have to put women in charge. I just don't see any other. And I think that's up to you as an electorate as well. But no offense to Rodney over there, but his wife might agree. But anyway, okay, I'll stop there. But
Sean, I feel like we should end the panel right there. I think that's it, right? Oh. I don't know. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, I was saying I think after that, Sean, we can close off the panel, but not just yet. Jerusalem, from your perspective, can you share some of your thoughts on this question?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can hear myself as well. Thank you. I am from the African Development Bank, as introduced earlier. I'm the country manager for the African Development Bank here in Zimbabwe. So at the African Development Bank, we actively support Africa's tourism sector. Tourism is embedded in all the development agenda. It's an embedded sector. So how do we support the sector? We support it through infrastructure. Yesterday we talked about transport infrastructure, aviation. We've supported the expansion of the airport in Accra, Kotoka International Airport. We will be supporting also an airport construction in Ethiopia, which is going to be the largest airport in the continent, or maybe among the top. So infrastructure is a very important element for our tourism sector. Energy supply. If we don't have energy, we would not have been able to communicate effectively in this room or in this beautiful setup environment. We also focus on regional integration, the regional corridor, the regional integration, so we can integrate to develop our economy, which tourism is a key element. We're also working with member countries for visa-free travel initiative, also working with the African Union. So this will enable us also to connect, better. Sustainability, eco-friendly projects. We're working with the government in providing public sector programs to build capacities to small and medium enterprises, especially women-led enterprises, youth-led enterprises, including in tourism sector. So this is, I just wanted to set the tone at the higher level. But I think my colleagues here have already, highlighted the issue of collateral, yes, issue of, persistent gender-based biases in lending, even though, the evidence shows that, women are much better in repaying their loans. Women also face weak access to professional network. How do we network? How do we get information? Issue of visibility. And also having a bankable projects that the bank can consider. So that's why the African Development Bank, we provide support to address these challenges in so many areas which I highlighted earlier. But when we come to specifically to women, we have the affirmative finance for women in Africa, which provide guarantees, which provide technical advisories to women, and also which provide financing targeted to women by working with commercial banks, that various businesses are benefiting. I can give an example. For example, in Zimbabwe, the AFAWA has worked with CAPS Zimbabwe. As a result, a number of women have benefited from that intervention. I'm also happy to inform you, I think about 2018 or so, we have provided the government of Zimbabwe a youth and tourism enhancement project, which is a public sector project by working with government of Zimbabwe, with the Ministry of Tourism particularly. We have supported the country in developing a tourism master plan study. So these are, the highlights, the issues as highlighted earlier, and also as I've included, but also the responsiveness. How do we address these challenges? So let me start.
Thank you so much for taking it into that. Thank you so much for taking it into the next space as well, in terms of what is available. Okay, I hope the feedback is on. As we head to you, Dr. Millicent, you sit within the policy space in your consulting role with ZTB. From your experience in your role, what are some of the barriers that you've seen for female and women-led SMEs in tourism?
Thank you, Mbali, for that question, and it is a privilege and an honor to be here. I think as women, when we go in any business sector, for instance, if you are talking about tourism, whether it's a product or a service, we must always be mindful that when it goes to the market, there is no gender selection by the customers. So when we are going onto the market, it must be competitive enough. It must be a quality product. It must be something that is authentic. So as women, I think my colleagues have spoken about the issues of collateral that women are asked to supply, and yet we don't have that. But when you're looking at an investor or a banker, they're looking for projects that are bankable, projects that can grow in a sustainable manner. So I think what we need in terms of supporting women is an institution like what we have here in Zimbabwe called Zimtrade. Zimtrade helps men and women in business to identify markets. They train people in terms of branding, packaging, how can you present your products on the international platform. So I think a lot of women in the tourism sector have the product, but in most of the cases, the product is not up to standard and is not bankable in terms of taking it to the market. So I think we need to create a platform where we can assist women with necessary research and identify markets. So whatever product that you are producing or service that you want to set up, it must have a market. Because an investor or a bank will say, okay, we'll give you the money, but how are you going to repay the loan that we've given you? My second point, I think it has a lot to do with attitude. I think through socialization, women were taught to be small, to shrink ourselves. Therefore, the bankers, when they look at women, they'll tell you start small, baby steps. But when it is a man, dream big. And you take your big dream to the bank, and the bank is looking at you as a man and say, you've got a big dream, and they want to finance it. So you're given trinkets of finance. So I think as women, we also need to move out of that realm of smallness and begin to think big. And when you go to the bank, you're confident of your product. My third aspect, and I think in terms of contribution, I think we need to create a database where in Africa, for instance, we are networking currently this whole week, and I can phone somebody in Kenya and say, you know what, you were in Victoria Falls, I understand you are in this sector in tourism, how can I learn from you? So that as women, there's a platform where we can network and exchange information. Because when you go to the bank, it's not about gender. They want the bottom line. They want their loan repaid. And you can only repay if there's profitability, there's longevity, there's sustainability in your product or service. Thank you.
I take from the big audacious goals, dream big, ladies. Minister, you have had a lot of experience within the private sector before your time in government. So I ask that you lean on both those sides of your experience as you lead into this question. What are some of the barriers that you've seen, and how do you think, looking at some of the practical steps we've talked about leading into your next session, that as Zambia, you have started to work on these barriers?
Okay, thank you very much, Mbali, and just to really appreciate that I'm speaking last on this question. So I've crystallized most of the points that were raised by my colleagues. But I think I will adopt a number of them, which obviously, at the risk of sounding pedantic, issues pertaining to collateral. And to be specific, in Africa today, women are not allowed to own property. And if you buy property, it's not just in the rurals, by the way, it's even in town. It has to be in the man's name. It's a good thing, Sean, it's a good thing. But I think what is more important is once you have that property, it now allows you to be able to be bankable, ultimately. The other issue that was raised, obviously, is the issue of financial literacy. Again, I think, we take this thing for granted. It's not all of us who are actually financially literate. And once you get to have a project, you actually find that you're not able to actually grow. And also, because of that, you end up finding yourselves being in a one-man show. Institutions that are only it's Rodney, SIKUMBA, and Sons, but you're the only shareholder in the company. And we always encourage women, ultimately, to be able to now create more networks. I picked up one of the discussions there. The social network from women is not that strong. For us as men, it doesn't really matter where we are. We could be in the bar sipping wines, whiskeys, and we're discussing business. But for the women, it's either that in 8 to 5 work job, and next thing they're looking after the children. So there's that problem that actually exists, which obviously we need to really, really work on. And then also, I think one thing which we seem to be shying away and we don't talk about it is that the tourism sector for a very long time has been what I would like to call a Cinderella sector. People never took keen interest in it until now, where now we realize that it can actually contribute more to our country's GDPs. I'll speak on behalf of Zambia. I mean, right now, for a very long time, it was quiet. It was like no pulse. But today, everybody's talking about tourism. And today, now, I've actually engaged some of the lenders to start speaking tourism. So if you're not known to be contributing anything to the sector, to the country's economy, nobody's going to pay attention to you. So now you can only imagine all these challenges that women are facing, and then they want to invest in a sector that is known to be Cinderella. Definitely very, very difficult. So what I actually see is a situation where now we're at a point where the sector is actually being recognized, and today we now need to have the financial institutions such as yourselves, the bank at some point, to be able to now see how best can we now support the women. Now, very, very critical, as I pose, is the cost of capital in Africa is way out of the roof. We need to start structuring ways and means on how we could actually find cheap money. Today, women can have a bankable project, even us men can have bankable projects. But what really holds us back into investing in this beautiful sector of ours called tourism is that the cost of capital is just very expensive. And ultimately, if we are able to now see ways and means on how we can actually extract affordable financing, then you'll be able to now start seeing that the women themselves with the bankable projects will come to the fore. And I like that aspect that our board member here raised. You don't need to think small. My mantra has always been, as I pose Mbali, go big or go home. It's very simple. So if you don't do it big, then leave it. Thank you very much.
Go big or go home, dream big, be audacious. Minister, in Zambia, we're seeing a massive increase in women-led businesses, specifically within SME. You've touched on a couple of items about how you've been able to reposition tourism as a priority sector for the government. Is this something that has been led by policy development? And if so, what policies have you put in place as a government to help achieve this? Is it the time now? All right. So, hi, everyone. We're going to take a small pause now. Women Empowerment is putting on a little bit of an exhibition for us. So, Minister, if we can pause, I'll come back to that question. They're showing us the power of women. We will continue in 5 minutes, and I think this is going to get us to wake up a bit. Turn up the music.
Try now Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection, a formula.
They're encouraging you to join them. Come on, everyone, get up off your seats. Except my panelists. Dr. Millicent, I think these ladies were listening to you around being audacious, around taking up space, around not wanting to play small, and to make sure that they shake up spaces where the leaders are. And that was a beautiful demonstration of just that. So thank you so much, ladies. All right, everybody's heart rate up now? Are we shaking a little bit? So, Minister, the ladies gave you a great time to pause and to think around that question. But I'll put it back out so the audience is with us as well. The question was, we've seen an increase in statistic around women-led businesses and SME businesses in Zambia. And taking from what we have just shared from the first session on the panel, what I was asking, Minister, is that has this been a deliberate, intentional policy shift, taking into account what you've talked about in terms of positioning tourism within your government spaces?
Thank you very much for that question. And indeed, everything that we do back home in Zambia is extremely intentional. My president always says, do things methodically, step by step. Some of these things shouldn't happen by chance. And we've actually realized that if you look at the population of Zambia today, the population in Zambia is very youthful, that's number one. 65% of the population is below the age of 35. And then if you look at the spread, we've got more women in Zambia. So we already know exactly what is going on. And more so, for a very long time, our women in Zambia were marginalized until when we actually started pushing the girl child agenda. But unfortunately, you know, you're pushing an agenda, girl child, then they left us, the boys, behind. And you actually see now to say the pass rate in schools ended up being almost at par, both boys and girls. Now, to quickly answer your question, we have been very, very intentional. And that's the reason why we're bringing up issues of financial literacy for women. We're also making sure that we make the sector itself, for lack of a better term, more sexy. So essentially, we are seeing women setting up businesses within the sector. The biggest challenge that has been existing, obviously, is the very fact that some of the businesses are not structured, and because of not being handheld. But today in Zambia, you actually see a lot of women in leadership, a lot of women creating the social networks that we're talking about. When women lead, all these other sector groupings that we have, that's the more reason why, if you look at my ministry specifically, I've got more women in my ministry than anything. Not that I employed them, no. But I did have a say in some of the women to be employed in the sector. But that in itself is a show of commitment from government to say women need to have a seat. This is why you saw these women here bullying themselves into leadership. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. So in Zambia today, we've actually seen that for the sector such as tourism, which obviously I regard as a soft sector, you need the soft touch. So the women themselves in this particular sector are the ones who are able to get to drive the economy, as it were. So for Zambia, we have actually deliberately gotten women into registering in tourism businesses. We have handheld them. Most of them actually, it's deliberate. Even when we're looking at matchmaking businesses today, if you're going to be speed dating, we actually encourage more women to participate in this particular aspect. So I strongly believe that if we rise together, both men and the women, to push the tourism agenda, I still believe that it could be one of the best, the biggest contributor into our country's GDPs. I'll pause there.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. And I think it then leads on to, and I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Sean. The World Bank for many years has been I'm not sure whether to keep holding the button or just to press it once. Just press it once? Okay, all right, thank you so much. So to go back to that, for many years, the World Bank has been a strong advocate of increasing women's access to finance, financial literacy, financial services. Taking from what the Minister has spoken about around Zambia's financial literacy programs and what they are doing there, what developments or trends have you seen regarding, specifically in Africa, regarding women's access to finance over the last 5 years? And what are some of the policies that are shaping that?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I think fintech and the rise of mobile banking has been a game changer, particularly for women. And the ability of small businesses to collateralize through cash flow because of mobile banking has completely changed the game. And I think COVID, in the statistics, we see that this dramatically increased during and after COVID. There's been a huge growth in women, particularly being able to open bank accounts because they were basically compelled to go into the mobile banking space. But on your question, I don't think we're doing enough. I think this notion of financial literacy. I think the foundational laws and regulations and perhaps changes in customs, these things need a very big push. You can't continue to have half of your society excluded from the ability to go to the bank for a loan. And yes, the fintech part of it is changing, but I think that those types of disruptive trends, modern trends, are something that we have to invest in systemically. And I don't think we're doing enough of it as development banks. I think that there's a lot happening, but it needs to be much more focused. It needs to, particularly if you're talking about businesses, let's say. You mentioned the missing middle, and I think that this missing middle of the SME space. So if I think about what IFC, for instance, invests in the tourism space, it's mainly large hotels. If you think about what is actually happening on the ground in a country like this, or any country in Africa, or any client country of the World Bank, 90% are small SMEs, are small businesses, and we don't have yet financial packages that we've adapted well enough to grow that sector purposefully. And that's where I think we have to focus, and that has to a real push for the next decade.
Sean, thank you so much for that, and it then leads me to Mary from SADC. So SADC's recent report, joint report with the UN, found that women in Southern Africa are still considerably at financial risk. Leading on from what Sean's spoken about, we haven't done enough. We still need to do more. What policies and programs do you have within SADC that advocate to increase women's financial inclusion? And can you give examples of some of the use cases and on-the-ground experience?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, we do have a couple of initiatives that we are implementing under the SADC Secretariat or within the SADC region. One of it is that we have developed a training program focusing on local communities that live in rural areas and adjacent to protected areas, where we train them on how to formulate proposals to be able to access finance. And the program doesn't just cover how to make up a proposal, but rather providing the whole education on tourism as a sector, how to identify opportunities that are there within the tourism value chain, and how to tap into those opportunities. But also it goes further to training on financial literacy, the business management, kind of business models that can be applied within the specific environment, and also how to come up now with the proposals that align with the policies of investors or organizations that are willing to put in some resources for tourism businesses, and also their mission. Because when making up a proposal or when formulating a proposal, it's very key to align with what the investors are willing to put their funds or their resources in. Secondly is the program itself, the SADC tourism program itself of 2020 to 2030. The program recognizes the role of women in tourism. And we have a program within it called Rural Economic Inclusion, where we advocate for women to participate, own, and lead in tourism. And we've identified some of these opportunities that women can take up and play their key role in leading into those tourism businesses and activities. And we've also started a new project recently. It's still at its inception phase, called Regenerative Nature-Based Tourism Development. The project seeks to improve the business practice of SMEs, again, of those that are living adjacent to protected areas. And we are focusing on women and youth. How can we support them to improve in terms of environmental protection, but also the business practice? And also strengthening the enabling environment for businesses, for the SMEs that are being operated by women. And how we intend to do that, or what we intend to achieve out of that, is making sure that we instill the right skills for business, for tourism businesses, in terms of biodiversity conservation, business management, and financial skills. And secondly is also making sure that we create a financial mechanism that has collaboration between tourism sector and financial institutions, because there is a missing opportunity there, and probably at some point we'll need to find a middle ground where we need to hear from the financial institutions what is it that they're willing to offer and what is it that tourism is willing to accept, and vice versa. And in that way, we are able to create a financial system that supports the nature of tourism businesses as it is. And also, issues to do with marketing. What we intend to achieve is to make sure that SMEs in tourism that are operated by women have access to market, raise their visibility, both at regional level and at global level, which is quite key. Making sure that, it was mentioned, it's not about having a tourism business, but rather, how is the quality and the service that you offer? Does it meet the international standard? Does it still hold the values from which you're coming from? So those are quite a few initiatives that, as SADC region, we are trying to make sure that women are fully engaged within the tourism space. And this project is being implemented in Kaza, the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, where Vic Falls falls part of it, but there are other 4 member states, which are Zambia, Namibia, Angola, and Botswana. And it's a project that will take place for 3 years, from 2026 to 2029, and we're hoping we will achieve what we intend to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So everyone in the room, you heard that. There's an existing project right now, an opportunity to be part of it. But I think it also is a great kind of catapult into a conversation for you, Jerusalem, around sustainability and resilience. Looking at the fact that this is the core of the African Development Bank's mission to stimulate economic growth. What are Let's try that again. I think technology and I today. So just to go back to that question, with African Development Bank's mission to stimulate economic growth and a more prosperous future for Zimbabwe, can you outline how women's entrepreneurs in tourism can best integrate sustainability to be more attractive to foreign investors?
Thank you very much. When we look at sustainability and resilience, there are no longer options. These are very critical elements for competitiveness. This is what investors are also looking at, and lenders are also looking at. And sustainability and resilience is also, it's part of our life now. I mean, looking at the resilience, we've seen it during the Cyclone Idai time. Looking at the COVID time, I think my colleague here earlier mentioned about the environmental and social governance framework. That is a very critical, framework. You should, I think, small and medium enterprise or women entrepreneurs should take advantage of that. Increasingly, lenders and investors are looking into that. From practical point of view, it would be good small and medium enterprises to adapt sustainability in terms of improving energy efficiency, improving water efficiency, as well as waste management. These are some of the things that can increase profitability and reduce costs for these tourist SMEs that are working in tourism sector. And also, it's critical to also to measure the impact that they're achieving. It's important to make sustainability investable, when especially in the eyes of the lenders. And also, it's important to demonstrate impact in terms of the sustainability. Investors are increasingly looking at the business practices. We talk about, if we look at the national development strategies of our regional member countries.
This is such great content. Can you just move your mic?
Oh, the mic closer. Sorry. Okay, I actually put it on my lap, but I'll still do that. Thank you. So, we aligned the national, our intervention with the national development strategies of member countries. The Honorable Minister mentioned about. So, tourism is part of that critical element, and sustainability and resilience the same way. So, it is, investors are, attracted by businesses that are using, that are adapting sustainability. We talked about the efficiency of infrastructure, energy efficiency, water efficiency, which will lead to the profitability of the entities. But also, how are we involving communities that we are operating in, whether it is in rural area or urban area? What about the cultural heritage? If we are also, I like to give the example of even the hotel that we are staying in. Are we sourcing resources that are, grown in the area? Local sourcing. These are the kind of thing also, like, in terms of businesses, they are reducing your cost, increasing your profit margin, and also inclusive. It has to be inclusive growth. Tourism has to adapt. The minister talked about, the high number of youth in Zambia. It is the case in number of our continent, in number of our countries. So how are we going to create jobs, clean jobs, fair jobs for young people, for women, as well as, SMEs should also think of that, in addition to investment, in addition to profitability, but also the development aspects, inclusion, including, marginalized people. So these are the areas. But even like as you are putting your infrastructure, is it, for example, accessible for, people, that will use, wheelchair. So it is kind of a comprehensive one, but I think let me pause at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think there's some great examples there of things that you can do. So if we're thinking sustainability, showcase impact, show how that also translates into more profitability and managing your expenses as well, and how you're building into the future. I'm going to take that into a question for Shedi next. After being here for a few days, we've seen how involved you are and connected with the local tourism network. So what I would like to ask you is, my apologies, Shirley. What I'd like to ask you is, what do you think can be done still? What more do you think can still be done to help women entrepreneurs within this area, for them to actually be able to grow and potentially catapult them out from informality into slightly more formalized businesses?
Thank you very much, Mbali. I think, firstly, I would like to just mention that I think Zimbabwe is actually in a very strong leadership position when it comes to this. We are fortunate to have two very strong women at the helm of key positions within this space. So I'm referring specifically to our Minister of Tourism and our Minister of Environment here in Zimbabwe. They are both women. They have set the tone and direction for inclusivity, but also for developing the SME market in the tourism sector and the value chain specifically. This has been translated into very real action on the ground here. To give you an example, in 2024, thanks to the support of World Bank, the Ministry of Tourism actually implemented a capacity building program with the SMEs, a large portion of whom were women-led businesses, to mention. And they trained 160 SMEs across the landscape in Zimbabwe on marketing, digitalization for business efficiency and sustainability. The other thing that our tourism ministry has done is through the sector assessments with the support of technical advisory services from the World Bank, they have actually made some policy adjustments in terms of the permits and licensing in the tourism sector. This is to really help with the ease of business and to support the growth of the SMEs in the tourism industry. So I think I just wanted to mention that there's a lot already happening and shaping this kind of sphere in Zimbabwe itself. Having said that, there's obviously still huge barriers and challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges is the access to finance for SMEs in Zimbabwe. There's also the challenge of market access, but I think there's a lot happening in that realm with the support of SADC and the development of memberships like Africa's Eden, where they're actually trying to bring in value chains for the smaller SMEs to slip into, which then feeds into the tourism sector. But I do think that really the market access and the access to finance is one of the biggest barriers for women-led businesses in the SME space in Zimbabwe. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you so much, Shelley. And it then takes me to Dr. Millicent, because what I've heard common, right, is we've talked about capital, we've talked about access to finance. What I would like to ask you is, what would you advise project promoters to do in order to make their projects more sustainable and bankable?
Thank you very much, Mbali. I think as women in business, one of the things that investors look for is scalability and growth. What are we talking about? Can your business go beyond survival mode? Can your business expand? Can you replicate your business and grow it sustainably? A very good example is if your business in tourism is based on cultural experience, how can you guarantee that the issue of the Zimbabwean culture, for instance, which is so unique, is maintained for 5 years to come, 10 years to come? Because culture is dynamic, and when you're selling that product, people want to experience the Zimbabwean culture. So how can you make sure that the culture is sustained into perpetuity? The other thing that you need to look at is to expand the tourism season. Because when you are making repayments to a bank, there is no break in between to say, now this is a low season in tourism. So you need to make sure that your product and the season you've extended it. How can you do that? Besides, for instance, if it is just accommodation, what else are you offering beyond accommodation that can create a revenue stream? So that your business is not only based on one revenue stream of accommodation. So you need to understand quite clearly what is it that a tourist looks for when they come on a holiday in Zimbabwe and Vic Falls and translate it into a revenue stream. So that if accommodation is low during a certain season, there are other activities that will continue to attract the investors to your facility. The other thing that investors want is authenticity. And what is your unique selling point within your business that can continuously attract investors to come for your business or for your service. And then I think one of the things that I would want to mention, which is very important, is do you have skin in the game? Do you understand the tourism market that we're talking about? Because when you are selling your product, people want to see that there is oneness between the promoter and the project itself. You're not simply doing it because your neighbor has set up an Airbnb and you also want to do it. How much of that business do you understand? So when you're talking to an investor, they're going to judge you in terms of the knowledge that you have in that business. One of the words, Mbali, that everyone is talking about is sustainability and resilience. Do the rural women understand what we mean by sustainability? Are governments are they deliberate in training people to understand what we mean by sustainability? Because that is what will then open doors for you within the tourism sector. And Mbali, what happened here when the women came and singing? They disrupted a program that was going on. So as women, we need to be disruptive. We've been talking and talking over the years about women empowerment. A very good example is we are here. This is a women empowerment conference in tourism. But I would like to ask the UN organizers, were we intentional and deliberate in picking women-run business in Victoria Falls? So that we move from being talk and policies on paper and start taking action. And we demonstrate by saying, as UN, when we went to Zimbabwe, and say, as UN, when we went to Zimbabwe, we were very deliberate in terms of our arrangements. We first picked women-run lodges or hotels and filled those and gave them activities. Because when you look at policies, I think every government in the world has a policy on gender equity, on inclusiveness, but what we need is to be practical in terms of the implementation on the ground, so that wherever we are going and having programs on women empowerment, we are actually practical in terms of the approach that we take. So I think my final comment is, women, we need to move away from expecting men to hand over the space for us in the tourism industry. We are, for instance, in Zimbabwe, the minister here gave statistics. In Zimbabwe, women are 52% of the population. Therefore, we have the critical mass to action the changes that we want as women. But we must always remember that while we are asking for affirmative action, the business world is not looking for affirmative access. So we need to make sure that our product is bankable, our product is a quality product, our service is authentic, because that is what the tourist looks for. Thank you.
I think there's been so much knowledge shared. So before I go into my last question, just a quick recap. Dream big, be audacious, go big or go home. Make sure that you are financially hygienic. Make yourself bankable and interesting. Look at sustainability as a means of attracting investment. Sean's favorite line of just give it to the woman. I think that closes everything. Hand it all over to the woman. We've talked about existing projects that are happening right on the doorstep of this conference that will be going on for the next 3 years. We've also talked about existing programs that are making a live difference right now, but still we ask the question around where else can we find additional capital, additional resources, and additional funding. So this leads me to my last question before we close off of our panel. I'd like to say, for all of those that are within finance, it's your opportunity to give a shout out to your programs. And for Shelley, with you being an entrepreneur, it's great to give a shout out to some of the programs you've worked with that you've seen actually make a difference. So my last question to the entire panel, we call it a little bit of an elevator sales pitch. What are the programs you have within your environment right now that our participants in the audience can go and look for? You can even give us a website address. Where can they go right now? Where are their opportunities? What are some of the things that they might not know about that are available and they can have access to right now? And who'd like to go first? I'm going to pick on you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mbali. I think we've been very, very intentional as Zambia, as government, to see how best we could prop the women to get into, first of all, the leadership space, and also to invest in the tourism sector. And at policy-wise, we have what we call the Citizens Economic Empowerment Commission. Now, that is pro-women. So most of the applications that come through that institution, which speaks to women-led businesses, they are given priority. And ultimately, that will now be able to now allow these women to invest in this particular sector. And then more so, I think we've done a fantastic job in the sense that most of the women out there are actually handheld. There's a program, obviously, within government, which is called the Public-Private Dialogue Forum, which is essentially a toolkit that looks at how best government and private sector can work. We realize that most governments have failed because they don't engage private sector. Governments have no business doing business. So we allow the private sector to take the driving seat. And you'll understand that today, in most of these institutions that we've sat in, which obviously, if we're going to talk about the tourism stream, most of those institutions are actually led by women. And I like what Millicent here mentioned. It's all about scalability. We need to identify those women-led businesses within the particular sector. And I want to also indicate to you that policy-wise, you know, we had to change legislation on our company registration, that now speaks to beneficial owners of the business. Now, once we know who the beneficial owner of the business is, if it's women-led, obviously it attracts certain incentives, as it were. So we are working tirelessly to ensure that there's a lot of parity in what we do in terms of the businesses, but also understanding one very, very critical fact. Most women find it very difficult to enter these businesses, and I will tell you why. It's mainly because of capital. I spoke about it, and I think colleagues here from AFDB, colleagues from the World Bank, you will agree with me that anybody who wants to invest in this kind of business in tourism is long-term. You can't invest today and then start getting your profits tomorrow. You have to sweat it out. Keep throwing money at it maybe for the next 5 years. That's when me, the tourist, will be able to feel free to actually deal with you. So you need to understand it. And this is something that I believe that if you're giving a chance to a woman, women are patient. Unlike us men, we want instant gratification. But if you're going to identify these women who are running tourism businesses, give them the capital at the right price, you'll be able to see that the sector itself will eventually grow.
So I see you've thrown that back as well to say we are doing what we can. We are putting the policies in place. Please support us, our counterparts on the other side around financing. Dr. Millicent, over to you.
Thank you, Mbali. I like what the Honorable Minister has highlighted, because when you look at Zimbabwe, the cost of capital, I think interest in most of the banks, it's a minimum of 18%. And that is suicidal. And yet when you go to Europe and globally, it's LIBOR +1, and it ends up at maybe 1.5%, 2.5%. And yet you want to invest that money in a project that will give you benefits, or your break-even point is maybe 5 to 10 years. At 18%, it's suicidal. I want to give you an example, Mbali. Unfortunately, I've tried to ask people about this place that I visited here in Vic Falls some 5 years ago. I spoke about sustainability and longevity. This place, they've got lovely views. Their lodges are in the bush, and you're looking at lovely views of the gorge and the Victoria Falls. But what is it that they've done to then create other revenue streams besides the core business of accommodation that they've created? They've got a goat project. They imported a specific type of a goat, I think from Australia, and they breed goats within the premises. They invite women from the community to come and learn about goat rearing. And once they've got the knowledge, they then give them a starter pack of goats. What else do they do with these goats? Besides meat, they produce cheese, goat cheese. They produce milk, which they sell. So in terms of training the women, they're now contributing to the community where they are operating from. The third aspect that they do is they grow herbs. So when you go there as a visitor, you learn a lot about herbs, and the herbs are they are also selling them and repackaging them for export. They've also gone further and created a program where they are planting trees, but they sell the project as a learning kind of tourism. So you have students from overseas that come and stay with them a minimum of 2 weeks. What are they learning about? They're learning about sustainability. They're learning about why these particular trees are being grown in the area. They're learning about the goats project. So they have extended their tourism season. They've extended their product into other value chains that then create revenue streams. So as a banker or an investor, when you're now looking at which project should I invest in, this would actually be an appetite for investors, because they are looking at the several revenue streams that have been created. It's an amazing concept, because what you need to look at when you're going into business are the different revenue streams that will sustain your business. Because one revenue streams at 18%, it's madness for you to take that loan, even if it is available. So I think we need to then look at women and say, even if my core business is accommodation, but can I network with my neighbors so that the product that we eventually offer to the world has the whole value chain, and we can all benefit and create revenue streams, even if you're getting 5% from that business because you've created a joint venture or a collaboration of some sort. So I think we need also to then change the way we approach business and say, we can talk about asking governments to reduce interest rates, but it will not happen because of where they're getting the money from, or whoever is giving money to governments, especially when they come to Africa. They say Zimbabwe is very risky, therefore the premium has to be higher. So these are some of the considerations that we need to look at. And I would like to appeal to the three bankers that are here to say, perhaps we need to be practical, because when you're based in Zimbabwe or in Africa, you experience the market, you understand the market far much better than your headquarters, to then begin to say, how can we come up with packages, loan packages, specifically for women that have a much more affordable interest rate, so that we can expand and bring into reality the issues that we're talking about, the issues of involving women and creating a bigger space for women into the tourism sector. Thank you, Mbali.
I take diversifying out of that, because I think you've dropped us a lot of beautiful examples, but that diversifying, looking at opportunities to diversify within your space and leveraging what you already have. Thank you so much, Millicent, for that. As I hand over to African Development Bank, it's almost a shout out now. You've talked a lot around your projects on infrastructure, and that is important in making sure that tourism continues to grow and is sustained. The question then goes back to you to say, what are some of the programs that you have right now that the audience can go and take an advantage of?
Okay, thank you very much once again. Earlier, I talked about the affirmative finance for women in Africa. It's an initiative being managed by the bank. I just want to give some statistics. I mean, we're talking about, there is more needs to be done, but also work is, a number of things also have been happening. As at December 2025, for example, AFAWA, which is the affirmative finance for, finance for women in Africa, it has approved $3.1 billion in financing across more than 200 financial institutions in 46 African countries. And this has led to USD $1.4 billion in disbursements, benefiting 26,000 women entrepreneurs. Okay? And this combination of it's including guarantees. Talked about, especially when, to respond to issue of collateral. It provides technical assistance, particularly in financial literacy, in having a strong proposal for women to enable to submit to financial banks, and also Catholic capitals. Okay, and we have provided effective, financing in unlocking finance for women who would otherwise would not have been, accessing, or who would have been included. This has also, who would have been included due to collateral constraints. So AFAWA is a very critical one. Let me come quickly, example in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, AFAWA has partnered with CAPS, Central Africa Building Society, okay, to strengthen support for women-led SMEs. Through this initiative, 45 CAPS champions were trained in non-financial services, and cascade this training to over 860 women entrepreneurs across 22 districts in Zimbabwe. Sometimes you may not relate it when you are dealing with CAPS or First Capital or EcoBank. You don't know where resources are coming. We provide, it will be difficult for us to administer, the transaction cost is high to work with all SMEs, individual SMEs, but we provide, trade financing line of credit to the banks that I have mentioned, for example, in case of Zimbabwe, to on-lend finances to small and medium enterprises. But we also work with, it's not only about providing finances to these financial institutions, but also for them to embed gender, understanding the gender aspect, and also to target. We have KPIs, what percentage of the resources that have been providing, for example, to CAPS, have benefited women SMEs. So these are something that I would like to share with you, but also please go to our website, www.afdb.org. You will be able to read, AFAWA and other financial products that we have. And when you go back to your respective, country or places, you will be able to also learn. And as Madam said earlier, be confident, don't take no for answer. But also, every time we point a finger to another person, the other three, fingers are pointing at us. How can we strengthen our proposal? How can we have a strong, cash flow and so on? Thank you. I'll stop here.
So to the rest of my three panelists, in this last minute that we have, elevator pitch, please. What do you have that's available that participants can take advantage of, or where would you like to send them to find some valuable practical tips on what to do next?
Okay, I can't answer that because I'm not based here, and I'm a very small fish in this huge pond. But what I will share is a couple of quick takeaways. So I've learned a lot in these last few days about the possible or the partnerships that could be happening with SADC, with the African Development Bank, with the CASA types of initiatives, and also about the focus of the work. So what I can influence is the kind of tourism-related content that goes into projects. That's my job within the World Bank. I'm not responsible for any of this other stuff, but what I will take away with me is in projects going forward, we will be considering, really some purposeful engagement of this SME space that is, probably predominantly, or at least the opportunity for the entrepreneurs is predominantly for women. And I think that's something just hugely important to build this tourism ecosystem at a local level. So thank you.
Mary?
Yes, thank you, Mbali. Just allow me to switch the mode. Enough of the challenges, and I will share a successful story. And I will cite this from where I'm coming from. So in the 90s, Tanzania had a project that was funded by the Dutch government, the Netherlands. And the project was the source of establishment of cultural tourism enterprises. And what they did was to take up several groups of women, train them on tourism, train them on tourism business, and provided donor funding as the seed funding for their projects. To date, the businesses have thrived. It's over 2 decades. The businesses have thrived to a point where some groups of women are making up to or more than 250,000 USD annually. And we've managed, or Tanzania has managed to replicate that into different areas of the country. And the replication is not exactly similar because it has to align also with the kind of environment where this group is from. And so you find groups of women that have ventured in tourism business given the kind of environment that they're in. So if they're if they're surrounded by coffee plantations, they've found a way to create products and services that align with coffee plantation and many other tourism products as well as a source of several streams of income. So I wanted to share that, and it's a learned lesson to some of other SADC member states as well as the whole of Africa. If you want to learn on how these women have successfully managed just from a donor funding to a point where they are quite sustainable, durable businesses have been created to date and they are thriving as they are, you're very much welcome to go to Tanzania and learn more about that. Thank you.
And Shelley, in closing.
Thanks, Mbali. No pressure on being the last
pressure.
closing remark. I think what I would like to do is really just as a closing reference is challenge everyone here on the panel and the wider system, both from a tourism leadership and from a finance perspective, is to really take away from this the opportunity to collaborate better and to look at, like Sean said, the overall ecosystem around women-led businesses, to really ensure that we are providing support to these women for more structured, scalable, and investable positions, and building the resilience with our own sectors by doing so.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for the extra time. We now need to hand over for our next session, but this has been absolutely brilliant. Minister, thank you so much for gracing us with your time this morning. To the rest of my panelists, what a robust conversation. Thank you so much. And I can release you from the stage now. Oh, okay. We are going to just take a quick group photo. Oh, are we not out of time? Okay. Can we put the Mentimeter up, please? Thank you so much. Okay, so we're at 23 of 101 registered respondents. Access to affordable finance now overtaking digital financial literacy. When we get to about halfway, at about 60 respondents, we'll utilize that as a gauge. But holding on strong is access to affordable finance. If you don't agree, please log in and share and vote for what you think is the most important. We're almost there. I'm challenging all the respondents. I want to at least get to 60, so we are over the halfway mark, so we can call it conclusive.